All right, hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Who Books That. This is a talk show where we're going to talk to comedians about significant shows throughout their career, just to find a little bit more about that comedian, and also to talk about shows across this country. We're going to talk to a bunch of different touring comedians that have seen all over the place and done all kinds of shows, and we want to talk about the best, the worst, their favorite, their first, all kinds of shit. And my first guest, the first person I wanted to talk to, is a friend and a wonderful comedian. He is about to record a new album with 800 Pound Gorilla Records. He runs the Altercation Comedy Festival in Austin, Texas. He is or was currently on tour with Eddie Pepitone, which is going to resume once we get back to normal. And he is an author of several books, and he is working on his latest one right now. Thank you for joining us, JT Habersaat. Say hello, JT.
Oh, man. How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm good, man. So let's kick it off. On this show, like I said, we're going to talk about different shows throughout your career. So let's just go ahead and start from the beginning. This segment we're just going to call Where, When, Why. So tell everybody where you started, when you started, and why you started.
Well, the first time I ever really dipped into it was mainly in college when I was like 19, 20 years old. But that was sketch. I didn't really do stand-up. I did a little bit of dabbling with stand-up, like maybe 8 minutes to open a show or something, which was, I was a punk rock kid. So I was really influenced by Henry Rollins's spoken word stuff and George Carlin and later on Bill Hicks. And so what I was doing then, you could have called it stand-up, but I booked it as spoken word, I guess. So it was just kind of wise-assy, but also somewhat serious. Sure. And the sketch stuff was very Kids in the Hall inspired. And so it's called Five Drunken Immortals was the name of our improv sketch group. Yeah, it was fun. We used to wear, well, now I guess it would be considered culture stealing or something like that. We wear like karate gis and shit like that.
Oh, yeah, appropriation. I like it already.
But it was super fun, man. And we did that for like a year or two. But that was pretty much it. After that, I went and worked in radio. That was my start. I worked in commercial radio for a long time and then publishing. But
were you an on-air personality? Were you on air?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
If you're familiar with radio stuff, I used to live in New York. And so I worked at a station called WDST in Woodstock, New York. And I worked there for about 5 or 6 years doing on-air DJing and programming. And I was they had a Radio Woodstock online when it was the birth of online radio, when that was a thing, the internet bubble birth. I was one of their programmers. I was like the young, obnoxious indie snob that told them what was doing, why they should fuck off with their Smash Mouth.
Oh, of course.
It was wild. But there's a guy named Nick Harcourt who runs a show called Morning Becomes Eclectic on KCRW, which is a pretty famous show. And Nick was the music director of WDST. And when Nick left, he gave me his on-air show, which was called Indie Flux. And so I was in a very unique position. I could play anything I wanted on a commercial station with about 3 million listeners.
Oh, that's cool.
Once a week. And so I'd play stuff like anything from Firewater to Luna to Bad Brains, whatever
you were feeling.
Whatever I was feeling, they left me hands off. So it was a good spot to be. But answering your question, I moved to Austin in 2005. My wife got a job out here, and I was kind of tired of radio and tired of working. I was doing publishing by that point, working at a newspaper house, like overnight, editing and stuff like that till the wee hours to get the paper out. And I came to Austin not knowing a person and not having a job and didn't know what I wanted to do. And I've always really liked stand-up. Maybe I'll give that a shot for real, Yeah. And so by 2006, I had started messing around a little bit and just started booking my own shows. They were still kind of spoken wordy, I guess you could say. Not so much joke format, or even, I've always been story format based, but like it was more of that, more like crazy stories and stuff.
Sure.
And it just kind of spiraled. I started doing my own shows in rock clubs mainly, and befriended some Austin comics, a guy named like John Rabin, and some people like that early on. And then by 2007, I would say 2008, was 2008. I started what became the Altercation Punk Comedy Tour, which
Yeah.
was decided. It had gotten to the point where I was doing shows with people like Stanhope and Janine Garofalo and Brian Posehn. Like they basically come to Austin and say, "Who's the weirdo doing weird stuff?" And everybody would say that
Yeah.
fucking New York guy, JT, whatever. And so I would usually get the nod from the music promoters because they knew me by then.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, it just started around 2008 is when I really started to become a thing that I was trying as a career.
So you kind of bounced around for a while
Mhm.
you were doing sketch, kind of telling stories and things like that. But like you're really like kind of, I guess, stand up birth was like 2008, you say?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done sketch since college. So even
Okay.
when I got to Austin, I didn't dabble in any of that. I think I went to one improv class just to see. The guy
Hmm.
was really nice who was teaching me. He said, "Oh, come check it out." And I went,
Hmm.
and I immediately like horrified everybody there because I'm pretty dark, and you know, improv is goofy, and
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I was also so much older by that point and more uh, cynical is not the word, but whatever I am now,
Sure.
more ranty and more kind of dark.
Yeah.
And so I instantly was like, "Oh, this is not for me." They're doing like invisible tuba playing or whatever.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Nah, this is not a good look. So that was a quick hard lesson.
So how old were you in '08 when you really started stand up?
I started late, man. I was
I started late too. That's why I ask. I was 33 when
I
I really
was
started.
let me see, what are we now? 2018. Let me do the fucking math. So 15 years ago. Uh yeah, I was about 31.
Yeah. Yeah.
About
Yeah. Okay.
like that. 31,
There's a
30.
few of us out there that didn't start till our 30s, you know?
Absolutely. But the thing with stand up is I almost view that as a benefit. For a while
Mhm.
I didn't.
Oh, me
For a
too.
while,
Yeah.
for a while I look at buddies like Jake Flores,
Mhm.
who was like when I started working, Jake was one of the first people I worked with on the Altercation tour. When I put that together, I wanted to have like my Ramones of comedy, so it was like
Yeah.
Jake and uh, Jake and Ruby Collins and Chris
Mhm.
Cubis and all those people,
Yeah.
Joe Stats. And so um, Jake was fucking 20, when I brought him out.
Yeah, man.
And now Jake's like 32 or whatever, but I still say to him, I'm like, in my head, you're still a 22-year-old to me. It feels like you've been doing
Yeah.
this forever. And I'm like, you're only 32? I didn't even start till I was your age.
I know, right? I know.
What the fuck?
I get it. I'm quite often the oldest guy in the green room. You know what I mean? Like I'll
Yeah.
be working a club or something like that, and the headliner's 28 and the feature's 25, and I'm 41.
That's the
Yeah.
only reason I tour with Eddie Pepitone. That's the only reason.
Right? I know.
So I can feel youthful.
I kind of what you said. I view it more as an advantage now because I remember a young comic once, like he was 24. I won't say his name. He's 24. He was really funny, but it was just it was that typical 24-year-old material. And I made a comment like, "Oh man, you're 24. Like you got the whole thing laid out." It's like you're 24. He was like, "Yeah, but I'd trade places with you because you've lived a life. I've done nothing but live with my parents and like take shits." You know what I mean?
Well, at 24, he should get the fuck out there. But also,
Exactly. But
that is a real thing, though.
yeah,
I have friends whose kids are 22 and still at home, and it blows my brain apart because
I know,
I have a
right?
great relationship with my parents, but I cannot wait to get out of the house and be independent.
Oh,
But
no, me. I was 19 when I left. I was
yeah,
19.
so
One year.
yeah, we could go down Old Man Alley with this shit. But
Okay,
I
so do you remember your first? What would you consider your first ever just straight stand-up show? What was that you
well,
got up there and just did comedy?
the first time, and this doesn't count. I'll give you both, okay? Because the first time
Sure.
I ever got on stage was I was in New York City. I was going to a show when I was 16 because I used to go down I grew up in upstate New York, but I'd take the train to Manhattan almost every weekend to go see shows,
Hmm.
go to JVs, whatever. And I was outside a venue and just hanging out, and I looked up and it was Stand Up New York, which is
Hmm.
a club in New York City. And I just started talking to the door guy, and I said, "Hey, how do you get on stage here?" Which only a 16-year-old kid would say. Um, and he said, "Well, you got 4 friends?" I said, "Yeah, I got 4." He said, "Well, give me your number, and I'll call you. And if you got 4 friends, we do what's called a new talent night." Well, it was a bringer show,
Yeah, of
but I
course.
was like, "What? Fucking New York City? New York City?" And so I had watched George Carlin and adored him, and
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I could try this." And so I
Hmm.
went down and I did it about twice when I could, dupe my friends in New York City, or a couple actually took the train with me to pay $15 back in 1991 or whatever the
You
fuck
should
it was.
Venmo them right now.
I absolutely should. For me to do my hot five. And the second time I did it, I remember the owner of the place was a seasoned killer. Like, I don't remember his name. He was just a club comic that knew what he was doing. And he was there and he decided he was going to get up that night, and he went in and destroyed, like just fucking annihilated with about 12 minutes. And then they brought me up and I was like, this isn't fun anymore. I was the floor after that guy just annihilated it. That was it. I didn't go back.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever got on a comedy club stage, I was 16 and it was New York City. So that's a good story.
Okay.
But as far as like what you're talking about, when I was in Austin, the first place I booked a show was a venue that's now closed called Headhunters, which was featured on Bar Rescue at one point, where they found bugs in the liquor.
Oh, nice.
It was a total, like, it's closed now, but it was a total rat hole that put on punk rock and metal shows, and I loved it. It was a great spot. And so that was the first time I booked a show, and just all my friends from kind of punk rock scene and bands and stuff showed up, and it was fun. But yeah, so that was probably 2000. I'd say I started dabbling late 2007, and then Altercation Tour for real 2008. So that was probably late 2007.
Okay. All right.
In Austin.
Interesting. All right. So do you remember the first time you ever killed? Do you remember the first set where you were just like, you felt it, you just fucking crushed?
I remember when I was doing the sketch thing, a show in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. All right. There's a venue there called Cafe Metropolis, which was a fantastic rock venue. And this is when we were doing the Altercation Punk Comedy Tour thing. And I also had a band called Goblet back in the day, which was like it was Spinal Tap meets Dungeons and Dragons. We wore monster costumes and had fire.
I can just see the word goblet in that heavy metal font.
The name came up first. It was the first thing came up with. And, we had a wizard named Futon who played a keyboard. And
oh, nice. Futon, the keyboard player. Hell yeah.
Futon the Conjurer, the keyboard player. And I played a child's drum kit in a full barbarian costume. And it was ridiculous. But we opened for like Bad Brains and Guar and shit. So
wow.
But anyway, here and there, I would do, like I said, with the sketch guys and with the band thing, I do stand up occasionally. And we were in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania at Cafe Metropolis. And I wanted to roll tape on my set for that night for whatever reason. I'm like, I'm going to go long. I'm going to do 18 minutes or so, like some crazy length of time in my brain. It felt like an eternity. And so I rolled tape on it and it just went really good. And I was like, wow, that felt like a real stand-up set. That didn't feel like spoken word. It didn't feel like whatever I had been calling whatever I was doing. And then shortly after that, I stopped until I got to Austin. I don't know why, but that was the first time it felt like people came up to me after the show and were like, that was fucking great.
Yeah.
I remember somebody's mom was there, like, because it was all venue, right?
Yeah.
And I was like 22. And the mom came up and she said, keep it up. You're very talented. That was really good. I was like, oh, an adult thinks this is good. Whoa. You know what I mean?
And then immediately you're like, I'm going to stop for a while.
I'm going to stop for 9 years.
I'm not going to capitalize on this heat at all. I'm going to stop.
The budding, pay you nothing industry of FM radio. So yeah, but when I first started, like in 2007, 2008 for real, there were a few shows that really, kind of stuck out where I was like, that felt good. The first time I ever worked with Stanhope was a pretty big milestone for me. And it felt, because I was booked for 9 tight minutes. And Martha Kelly was featuring Martha Kelly from Baskets, who's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, she's great.
And she's great. And, I had been in Austin a year and a half, and she was running late. She wasn't there yet. And I said it finished, and it had gotten a really good response. And Doug, I see Doug from the side of the stage, and I said, I promised Doug I'd keep it tight. And he yells from the side of the stage, don't you fucking dare get off the stage. Keep going. Okay. All right. But then it was, all right, I had my tight 9 minutes prepared. I wasn't going to burn that mic. I wasn't going to go long. And so then I'm like, well, shit, what do I do? I had material. So then I just started freewheeling with what I had material-wise, and it was looser. But I ended up doing 25, almost 30 minutes before Martha got there.
Yeah.
So that was a good first impression.
Wow, so you went from 9 to 25 to 30?
Off the top of my fucking head. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, Yeah. I had 30 minutes I could do, but
Yeah.
I just was riffing with the crowd and
Oh
just having
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things when you prep for 9 minutes, you might, if you have 30, but they tell you to do 10, but then on stage in the moment they're like 20 more. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. Because those 9 minutes, you don't want to. I try and keep it loose enough where I can address something in the crowd, but I don't
Yeah.
do crowd work, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to keep it tight and respectful for the
Mm,
first time working with somebody of Stanhope's level. And so for him to be like "fuck you, keep going" was great because
yeah.
and then also that crowd is such. I always say it's like lassoing a shark, stand-up crowds, because
Hmm.
it's almost like Tool fans. It's like they're there to see one thing, and
Yeah.
if you add to that experience, fucking cool, and they're all about it, and they love you for it. If you overstep that boundary, or if you eat shit, they fucking hate you, and they'll
They
throw
hate you.
batteries at your
Yeah.
head.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it just went really well, and after that whole night was just a really good feeling. Just
So
it was really good.
that might dovetail into this next question, which was the show that made you feel like you're a real comic. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do know what you
there's a
mean.
turning point for all comedians where like imposter syndrome is such a thing for
Oh yeah,
entertainers, comedians especially, where like you're doing things but you are in your head, and then sometimes you have that like that tuning fork moment where you feel it, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
so it's like, was that moment, or did you have another moment where you were like, I'm a comic, like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There were two moments. That was one kind of, but so it's a two-part question really. So there was another one I opened for Brian Posehn, the first time I worked with Posehn, and I had heat stroke.
Oh shit.
And we were doing a venue called Red 7 in Austin, Texas, which is an outdoor venue. And there was a band book later that night, so it was a 5 p.m. show. And in Austin, peak sun time is 4 p.m. And so when we hit stage, I was out of my brain. We had definitely smoked out before the show, which I
Yeah.
rarely do
Yeah.
before a show, but it's fucking Posehn, my first time working with him, so I'm not going to
Of
do that.
course. Yeah.
And I had, 20 minutes, I think, to do. And I got up there and I remember, all right, do your job. Like, you got to do your job. It was a packed show. And I was so out of my head. I remember pouring a cup of water over my head at one point, just like fucking on stage, which I would
Yeah.
never do. But it was, yeah. And afterwards, I came off and I had no recollection of whatever I did.
Hmm.
Uh, Everybody, my wife was there and she was like, "Oh, so you're feeling better?" I'm like, "No, I feel like I'm going to have a fucking coronary. I'm going to go, it's like I need to get a bucket of ice right now."
Yeah.
She's like, "Because it looked like you were 100% fine on stage." And so that show stuck out in a way of like me thinking, okay, even if I feel awful and all the kind of elements of what should not amount to a decent set are there, I can rely on muscle memory by this point and do my
Yeah.
job. And that
Yeah.
felt good.
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
like I could power through a lot of situations. So
Hmm.
that made it feel real.
Hmm.
Um, and accolades from, I worked with Henry Rollins.
Hmm.
I had road managed, I run a record label called Altercation Records, and some of our bands have been on Warped Tour and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I had done some dates the one year they had stand up on Warped Tour, which did not work at all, but I was happy to be asked to
Sure.
do it.
Yeah.
And it's how I got to meet some really good friends to this day, Mac Lindsay, and just some great comics. But the Warped Tour knew of me, and they said, "We're doing a big 4th of July blowout, and we want you to open for Henry Rollins doing spoken word, and then this band Gallows, who I love, are going to play." And I was like, "Fucking what? Yes,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
4th of July." It's like
Wow.
awesome, yeah, because there's no Warped Tour on 4th of July, so it was me doing 15, 20 minutes, and then Rollins, and then Gallows. And so I had interviewed Rollins before when I was doing, literary stuff and radio, but he didn't know me,
Mhm.
and I was like, well, there's no way he's going to watch my set or whatever. And I looked over and there's fucking Rollins side stage watching my whole set, and like,
Yeah.
and he gave me really nice press quote after. He's like, "Let me email you," or whatever. Just cool. And so that felt really fucking good too, because that was somebody that for me listening to growing up was like huge.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Um, so that felt really, I was like, oh, this feels real now.
Yeah.
On a term, I still didn't feel accepted by the comedy community or
Sure.
like stand up. And
Sure.
honestly, by that point, I still felt a little weird calling myself a stand up comic. I didn't know what I
Mhm.
called myself. I said I do comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but because I didn't really do a lot of clubs and I didn't write joke format,
Hmm.
I felt almost a little fake putting that brand on it. I didn't feel I was there yet, worthy to do that.
Yeah.
But that was the point where I really started feeling it. And then obviously, once I signed to like Stand Up Records and
Hmm.
started, having label and some degree of industry interest, then it's like, oh shit, okay, this might be
Yeah.
a career option,
Sure. Okay.
So,
Well, I mean, I think like when I first heard of you years ago, it was definitely there's always been kind of a music connection a little
yeah.
bit. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
I understand what you mean with the classification of like just saying stand up comic versus like kind of an amalgamation. You know what I mean? Of like
Yeah.
so it's like so I mean you're a multi hyphenate, so which is cool. So
It's interesting too, though, because like when I first came out, I wanted to brand it as punk rock comedy,
yeah.
because that was what I wanted to do. But then, of course, people go, "Well, what does that mean? Are you just going to tell
Mhm.
Danzig jokes? Like, what is?" And I understand confusion there, but to me, I was like, "No, it's stand-up comedy, but it's in rock clubs, and
You're
it's
just gonna skank on stage. Yeah.
yeah, exactly just
Yeah.
wear checkered pants and fucking start a pit." But it's but the concept to me made sense. Is Fugazi? It was
Yeah.
fucking we're gonna charge like no more than like $10, and it's gonna be
Hmm.
in a bar, and no one's gonna say what we can or cannot say,
Yeah.
and all those things. But then as I got along to the point where I started working more clubs, proper clubs,
Hmm.
and again, it's been fucking a long time now, 12 plus years, whatever. Um, I started to intentionally leave the punk part out because I didn't want it to be just an implication, because I found that some people, when they would come to see the show, if I was touring with non punk rock comedians or whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
that they were worried I was going to be mean to them, or they
Yeah.
were worried that I was going to be so inside baseball with references to punk rock stuff or counterculture that they weren't going to get it. And I
Hmm.
said, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be like, oh, he's going to be a fucking jerk, or I'm not going to get it because I'm not cool enough, or, any of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so I intentionally dropped the punk thing from it and just started calling it the Altercation Comedy Tour. And by that point, everybody that knew me from the punk thing, or the punk, who were attracted to the punk aspect of it, already knew me,
Yeah.
or largely knew me, or said, oh, I've heard of that shit. Okay. Um, Whereas people who didn't know me, I wanted them to be like, oh, I've heard of that, but I'll check that out. I wanted to be more inclusionary. And also I wanted to push myself in terms of, I can yell to a punk crowd that's going to get all my references all day long. That's fucking
Sure.
easy. I
Yeah.
want to appeal to people, in their 50s who are just there to see a comedy show,
Yeah.
and see if I can take what I want to do,
Hmm.
which is still angsty and my own brand of whatever, and to a degree referential. There's always going to be a degree of it,
Yeah.
but make them also have a great time. Like that's what's challenging to me,
I
And
think
so
that's the thing with all comics, though. You go through that when you first start, like
yeah,
so much niche. We're very nichey because we
sure,
feel like we're reaching out to like these pockets that we know very well. But
yeah.
then the more you do it, the more you're like, holy shit, you got to cross over into pop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But also, when I first started, I was so fuck the industry. I didn't
Yeah.
care. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm not going to an open mic. I'm not going to fucking
Yeah.
a contest. Fuck you. And I'm still kind of like that with contests. I don't like contests,
Yeah.
but I understand why people do them, and I'm not going to naysay someone that does it.
Yeah.
And it's also, I get a lot of comics, younger comics now, that say, how do you get this cool audience you have to a degree? Not that I pack out huge clubs or anything, but I have a
Sure.
degree of fan base that I can generally rely on to show up in some small amount, depending on market.
Yeah.
And they're cool. They're comedy fans. Some are dicks, but generally they're cool, and they buy merch and they do all those things. Like, how do you get that fan base? I say, you need to grind it out and figure yourself out for fucking a decade, man. I don't know. It's a very hard, difficult road. And honestly, if I were to go back, I think I wouldn't have been as hard edged with my
Sure.
regard to clubs and comedy with a capital C. I think it would have been more like, let
Mhm.
me try that a little bit more.
Yeah. Hindsight's always 2020, but
Yeah,
it's like, it's also it forms you into the comic you are today. So
absolutely true. And if I
you
had
know what I
if
mean?
I had done that, I wouldn't have written my second
Exactly.
book. There's a
So it's
lot
like,
of,
yeah, it's
but
win-win. It's
it's fine. And now where I'm at, I will happily play comedy. I mainly do comedy rooms now. Like
sure.
it's mainly what I do. I'll do a
Yeah.
rock room also, but only in
Mhm.
the guise that it's well established it's comedy. I'm not going into a fucking
Yeah.
comedy dive just to prove a point. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
that battle has been fought and won to the degree that I need it to be won in
Yeah.
terms of being like, all right, prove that point. Now let's not run uphill on roller skates. Let's make it a little bit easier.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I've put on some shows for you, and I mean, you definitely have a fan base, which is what we're all striving for. So that's awesome.
I feel privileged, man, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, with the festival too, like I started the Altercation Festival, it's gonna be 5 years this year, which is fucking nuts. And
Mhm.
just when I bring in friends by this point, people like Posehn, it's a small room for comics of that level,
Mhm.
or Chad Daniels or Kinane or whoever. And so they're essentially doing me a favor by playing 250 people one night, to fly
Sure.
in. But also they're like, this crowd is fucking tremendous.
Well,
And
I've been there. I've done the
yeah, you're the
festival,
last year.
and yeah, the energy in that room is like it's crazy. Plus, like I've been doing comedy for a long time now, and I've done over 30 comedy festivals, and that's the only one I've ever seen where it's multiple nights in one space. You never
Yeah,
go anywhere else, but
yeah.
nobody ever seems to tire of that.
I know, it's amazing,
It's
right?
amazing. It really is. It's like as a comic seeing that for the first time, you're like, this should not work,
Yep.
but it
And
works.
that's what on paper also, when I first started it, because I said I need the right venue. That's why, because people are asking me for years, start a festival because I can promote. I know how to promote.
Hmm.
I said, no, I don't have the right venue. I don't want to, it's tough to figure it out seasonality wise because I don't want to compete with Moon Tower. I don't want to compete with South by Southwest. I don't want to step on the heels of Cap City doing their contest or anything because I want to be respectful of all that stuff. Even if it's not for me, like a contest, I greatly respect the comedy scene in Austin and I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And so, but then it's also fucking hot in the summer and all those things. And so once I finally found a venue and a period of time, which is, fall, um, I I said, okay, this could work. And I immediately, the first year was like anything, a bit of a gamble financially and also a dice roll to
Sure.
see if it would work. But having done many festivals myself also, the biggest complaint I found from audiences and myself, honestly, as a performer, is that you could do these festivals that have great fucking headliners and have really good venues, but there's six of them. And if you take the crowd and you move them all over the place and
Yeah.
you're up against another great headliner, or,
Yeah.
I remember doing one in New Orleans and, I was headlining and down the street, Sean Patton is headlining and we're both fucking bummed out because we both wanted to watch each other.
Was it hell yes?
Yes, it was. Oh, yes, yes, yeah, yeah. So I'm headlining Siberia,
Yeah.
and he's down at I forget what the other one was around the corner. It might have been the New Movement, the Proper Theater,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we're both like, oh fuck, that's not fun. Like I want, and
I know,
so I
right?
learned from doing that stuff. I'm like, you're splitting the audience in half, and if I go to a festival, I want to. It's like when you go to a music festival, I put two of the bands you're stoked to see at the same time on a
Yeah.
appealing.
Yeah.
Fuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not cool. And
Yeah.
so I said, if I have the right venue, because comedy exhaustion is a real thing, you can
Oh
laugh at
yeah.
a crowd, all
Oh,
those things. So when I started, I did, Wednesday and it was originally just Thursday, Friday, Saturday where was altercation. And Thursday we had, I want to say just one show, and then two shows Friday and two shows Saturday. And then I had band the Beaumonts close it out late Saturday night
hmm.
because I was like, two shows is a lot, for people to sit through, even with a break. But no one left. People fucking came and they
Yeah.
sat there and they stayed from, whatever it was, 9 p.m. to 1. And so I increased it the next year. I said, all right, well, we'll add a Wednesday. We'll move it in a little earlier. And then we did one show Wednesday, two Thursday, three Friday, three Saturday, and everybody stayed. I said, this is impressive. And then by the third year, man, people, and I first had Pepitone, who I didn't know at that point. Pepitone came in and Posehn and Derek Sheen and all these motherfuckers, just killers. And I just said, all right, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to try and, 3 shows,
Yeah.
half hour break in between, run it. No bullshit. This is what you get. You can leave if you want, whatever, but show starts, show starts. And everybody stayed. People come in on a Wednesday, get there at 7:30, seat, take breaks, drink, feed the bar,
Yeah.
all those good things in between. But everybody stayed till fucking 1 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
And that is, dude.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it works.
That's it. And so now I'm such an asshole. Last year, I'm like, let's add stuff during the day on Saturdays. Now it's like a brunch, but people show up to that too.
Yeah.
And so I feel very privileged and never take the fan base for granted in terms of how rad they are and how impressive
Mhm.
they are as true comedy fans. Like it's a
Mhm.
really, really rare thing. And I don't think in 5 years I've had to throw anyone out. I think I may have had to tap someone on the shoulder that was drunk and too enthusiastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no asshole hecklers, no like jerks, no, no rude, like, and so, yeah, as far as the
Last year, the rowdiest person I saw was Andrist. Was the
oh,
rowdiest person.
fucking Eddie. I don't know if you saw the podcast he did during the day the next day, where he was talking about how there's the funny shit because he was soberish the next day and he was very funny. The podcast, yeah, because he ate shit at that show,
Yeah.
and I had paid him after the show because I'm a man of my word. And the next day on the podcast, he's going, "Yeah, I woke up and I found these crisp $100 bills in my pocket." I'm going, "These must be fraudulent. Why would I have these fake $100 bills in my pocket?" Blah, 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 blah. And Brett Erickson goes, "Well, allegedly you performed comedy last night." I'm in the crowd going, "I paid you, you asshole." From the bank $100 bills that he thought were fake. He was just going to, oh my God. So
Yeah.
they call that crew the Unbookables for a reason. But
Yeah, man. Erickson
I've-
killed, dude. That was I
Brett is
loved his set. He had my favorite set of the whole fest, actually. Him and
Brett is,
Pepitone both murdered.
oh, Eddie is like, touring with Eddie is such a dream because we just hit it. He's from New York too. So we just like our synchronicities sync up in a way that's almost spooky sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because we both have the same rage, but also try to be very approachable and friendly. And he is just so fucking funny and is so brilliant in terms of every night on tour with him is different. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's really, I don't know, man. I'm so stoked it's been working out so well.
That's awesome. All right, let's move on. Next, what's the worst you've ever eaten shit? What's the worst? Worst
Oof.
bomb.
Well,
And let's go ahead and eliminate like those starter bombs. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? I'm talking
I
like
know
you're
exactly what you mean.
established and you just ate shit. Like what's the one that
There's
haunts your dreams?
there's one in my book, my recent book, where I went full time in 2014, and pretty much when I left my last desk job, which was a decent paying marketing job, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to fucking work and be a comic, even though I'll be making a quarter of the money. I'm going to fucking work my ass off. And so I lived on the road a lot after that. And so I was out with Mishka Shubali, who we both met via Stanhope, and he's a musician and writer and
Mm-hmm.
does comedic stories and stuff. And we were on tour in LA, in Hollywood at the Sunset Strip, where I'd done LA before. I'd never done the Sunset Strip. And the venue, this was the show that Mishka booked. I usually book most of them, but I'm like, I don't know LA. He was living out there at the time or around there. He's like, I'll book it. Cool. It was the shadiest fucking promoter. It was like if cocaine wore more sunglasses, it would be this fucking dude. And the venue was, you had to walk through, it was called like the library or something. I forget what it was called. But you walk through this like hair metal band, like literally the drummer from Poison was there holding court, like for real.
Mm-hmm.
Sunset Strip, Hollywood. And you walk down towards the bathrooms and there is a secret door, like in Clue or some shit, a fucking library door. You pull the book and it opens and that's where the comedy show is. So no one knows how to get to this fucking place. It's literally like you have to know someone to find it. All right. Which
is very LA. That's some LA shit right there.
So LA.
Yeah.
And it was us with like a band and
I just imagine it was y'all in like the Cherry Poppin' Daddies or something like that.
No, it was actually my buddy John Pebsworth, who was in oh God, what was the ska band he was in? Speaking of skanky, he was in God damn it. He used to work for Cy One Dummy. He was in a very famous ska band that I cannot remember the name of, but he was there because he was like, oh, my band will come play. I'm like, cool. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I know that venue, it sucks. I was like, good. I didn't book it. Yeah. But Brendan Walsh was there also, mm-hmm. who's from the Unbookables, originally a very, very funny, respected comic. Yeah. And Brendan has always been super nice to me, but Brendan is a world-class wise ass. And mm-hmm. you cannot tell if he's fucking with you or not sometimes. And he was just kind of weird with me. And him and Mishka go way back, so they were instantly broing down. And I got that, sometimes you get that thing where you don't really know a comic, but you respect them, but you've had instances, but it's like, oh man, this guy doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Like this, you just start getting in your head, get in the comic mode of like neurosis of like, oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I was a little bit in my head. It turns out he was just on an edible. I found out after that.
Yeah. It's never you. It's always them.
Largely not, but it didn't matter. My brain started spiraling, going, "Oh, this guy I like thinks that, whatever." Okay, and so then we start the show, and also I had done punk rock bowling, and there's a lot of tangents. Stay with me. I had done the punk rock bowling festival many years in Vegas, which is booked by the Stern brothers, which is Mark and his brother who run Youth Brigade, the band, and BYO Records. And so I had done the comedy there many times with Joe Sib and Kyle Kinane and stuff, and it went great. Like 800 people, punk rockers, fuck yeah, I can do that. Fish in a barrel. It was fucking phenomenal for years. Except the Youth Brigade guys, because they're running so many things, would always show up 10 minutes after the show went, how'd it go? I'm like, how'd it go? It was 800 people here, motherfucker. You didn't see it? All right. It was really good.
Yeah.
So they had never seen me. Well, they happened to show up that night wanting to finally catch me in my element.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, when a show's not going to be good, you just know. I'm like, I know this is going to be a bad show.
Yeah.
And I went up and it started and I was like, I'm watching Brendan Walsh watch me. The promoter isn't there. The promoter just showed up and Mishka's talking to him doing like business, trying to hammer. I could tell the deal's already fucked. The guy ended up running out with the money. And but I could tell, like, you see in your peripheral, like, this isn't good. That's not a good sign.
Yeah.
And it was just awful. It was just, I flubbed punchlines. I was just off my game. And it was, Hollywood, man. It's like, and I'm watching this guy from Youth Brigade, a band that I grew up loving, who's heard about me killing on his festival for years, was watching me eat epic levels of shit, like the worst. And I gotten to the point where I hate myself, where I did the thing of like, hey, give it up for your bartender, just trying to get sort of, the thing you see comics do that are young, that you're like, okay, you'll get over it. But that I was so drowning in this pool that I did that to get any sort of energy and response or anything. And she's like, oh, thank you very much, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, man, this is not going well. And then the bartender lady, who I just said tip, yells out, it sure ain't, honey. This is some sad shit.
Oh, no.
And the level of betrayal, I snapped. I turned around and said, well, then fuck you, you traitor. I just told people to tip you. I hope you never get tipped again. I fucking went off on the bartender because you're supposed to be on the same team, you know? And I was like, God. And so that was it. I just fucking, I melted down, flipped out on her, and I walked off stage and behind the stage because I didn't want to face anybody. I was so embarrassed that I ate such epic level shit in front of all those people. And so I went, they had given us our warm beer, tall boys of PBR, disgusting. And Mishka doesn't drink. So I sat back there and the rest of the show, I wouldn't come out. I just listened to them do their sets and just drank warm PBR. And I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Who followed you?
Fucking Brendan Walsh.
Did he kill?
He didn't kill. He did what he could.
He did.
He turned it into a comedy show.
Sometimes it's that salt. The next person goes up and just fucking crushes, and you're like, "Oh no, it was me. It was me."
Well, here's the other thing that double compounded in my head, because I did that give it up for the bartender thing, right? Which I fucking hated myself for doing, and then it turned into a nightmare closer thing. And he gets up and he starts going, "Give it up for the room. Give it up for the venue. Give it up for the sound guy." And I'm like, "Oh, he's mocking me doing that thing I never do."
Yeah.
Fuck. Now I'm also a hack. You know what I mean? Like now he thinks I do that a lot. I don't. Yeah. But I found out years after that fact when I'm hanging with him he was out with Stanhope and I'm hanging with him and he said, dude, I open with that all the time.
All the time.
I didn't know that though.
So again, you're in your head. You're like, oh no, he hates me.
That's the thing he would open for. He would do the give it up thing and then he'd slowly, but I thought he was doing that strictly to make fun of my game.
No.
So it was a bad one, man. It really made me want to, I was like, I quit. This sucks. Forget it. Forget it. It took 2 or 3 shows for me to really wash the stink off.
Shake it off. Yeah. Oh no, I hear that, man. I hear that.
And the dude did run away with the money. He bounced and Mishka's leaving him.
Oh, Jesus.
It was a true Hollywood tale. So that's a good one.
That dovetails directly into the worst show you've ever done. We'll just take that as a double answer.
Well, I
What's
can give you a worst show. Let me real quick.
yeah, give me a
Show
real
that looks
quick.
bad for me.
Here's the thing: when I say worst show, not your performance. I'm just talking about the show was fucking bad.
Andy Dick.
Is that your 2-word answer? Is that
You
it?
can leave it at Andy Dick. I had a great time and was so glad that I was booked just to open and had nothing to do with promoting that show or any part of it. But let's just say Andy Dick. When I worked with Andy Dick, that show was a fucking volcanic hot mess to a level of I still think about that show and go, my God, what a train wreck disaster that show was. But I had a good time doing my set and it was super fun to watch.
So let's talk about your favorite show. Now, when I say favorite show, it could be a recurring show that you do when you tour, could be a venue, could be a city, could be a producer you love to work with. Just like, what's your favorite across the country? What's if you could put your finger on one? I know there might be several, but let's just highlight one right now. What's one of your favorite shows to hit?
Well, the one that really always sticks out with me whenever I do the East Coast is it's strangely enough, it's not a comedy venue at all, but it's a dive bar in Trenton, New Jersey called the Mill Hill Basement. And it's one of the first places I did with the Altercation tour where it felt like home in terms of everyone there got it. The shows are super rowdy. Like we had a heckler and this punk girl walked up and punched the heckler, like knocked his glass off his face. Like, oh, fuck yes. Oh my God. Just like the shows there are always next level drunken rowdy, but in the best way.
Yeah.
And whenever we have openers there, they're always fucking weird and new to comedy and dark in a good way. And just, there's something about, and Trenton is not,
I've been to Trenton. You don't have to say much about
it's
it.
It's not a market you usually. It's like, wouldn't you go 40 more minutes and do Philadelphia?
Yeah, right.
Yes, I do. But also, there's something about the Mill Hill Basement in Trenton that is, I will, always go there at some point. I may not get there every year these days, but it's a place that no matter, it holds, I think the capacity is 62 people. It's a place that's, for whatever reason, just feels like trapped in amber punk rock fucking it's just I don't know, something about it that really I love.
So it's a little rock club, but they do like one-offs and stuff like that?
Yeah, they do punk. As far as I know, when I was out there with Jay Chenoyne, who's fucking hysterical. He just signed a stand-up records. It's a great special out of New Hampshire. Jay just did a tour and teamed up and did a show out there with some comics. But prior to that, I think me and the Altercation tour are the only comedy they've ever had.
Oh, okay.
It's all just punk rock bands. And
that also makes it kind of more special. I mean, I get that for sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
To a degree. So, that place just feels like a home to a degree for always.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. All right, we talked about a bunch of shows and some great stories. We're gonna cap this off with a segment I call "Build It Up and Tear It Down." So the first half of this "Build It Up" is right now. Tell me something you love about comedy. Something, someone, whatever it is, something you love, and then in the "Tear It Down," something you fucking hate. Someone you hate, something you hate. So something you love, something you hate. Now, I know in this weird world we're living in right now, this is all virus withstanding. This is, imagine we're all on even playing ground right now. What's something you love? What's something you hate?
What I really love is that when I first started, the concept of doing comedy outside of a comedy club was really foreign and really not looked down upon, because that's not right, but it was really alien. It was really a weird fucking thing. Yeah. And now I feel like any venue that gets it and has the right parameters, because you need, stuff like good audio and a good stage and lighting and all that sort of stuff. I think that's super important. You can't just fucking throw the lights on in a pool billiards room and have a show. But I think the fact that if you have a degree of interested audience, you can turn almost any alternative space into a comedy room and have it be good.
Yeah.
I really love that. And it's made touring for me so much easier in terms of, because I always used to try and play the weird spots or whatever, but now you know, I mean, the place where I do Altercation Comedy Festival is a fucking coffee house. You
It
know,
is.
it's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do comedy and other music and stuff there now, but
yeah,
it's not a comedy club, that's for sure. But the setting is perfect, and
yeah.
it's all the so I really like that, and mixed with the fact that when I started even 10, 12 years ago, there were funny women, of course, and everything, but to see the variety of diversity is fucking
Mhm.
awesome.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and that's something I've really tried to be conscious of when I book the festival too. Like I really want female headliners, and I want all stripes of everybody. You know, like that's
Mhm.
really important to me. As long as it's funny, I'm not going to book somebody just because they're.
Of
But
course. As a
but
booker, I know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about. I mean, the whole, I mean, for lack of a better word, what we call DIY. You know what I
mhm,
mean? It's like
yeah,
the parallels between punk rock music and the way it was born and stand up comedy over
mhm,
the past few years are really strong. You know what I mean?
yeah. I agree, man.
Honest, I'm a big DIYer myself. Like I run right now, I book 8 shows here in
Man, you're
Upstate.
fucking one of the best. It's funny too how many people, you know, I always think, well, I mean, Josh McClain now is one of my closest friends and a
Yeah,
frequent roommate. But, you know, the first time I ever did the high tone, fucking 7 years ago, you know, Josh McClain was there and Katrina Coleman was there from
yeah,
Memphis, you know, and, you know, you go to, uh, you know, Dante Powell and just all these,
yeah.
you know, running Iowa and Des Moines and all that. It's just,
Hmm.
it's nice that the people who are the diehards, even if they've only been 5, 6 years,
Yeah,
are you see the same faces when you go over and over again, and that's
yeah.
rad. You know,
Well,
it's
it's
really
so important for us because, like, I mean, I work in clubs,
mhm,
you know, and I do, you know, what like we say, big C comedy or mainstream
yeah,
comedy, and I do that. But at the same time, it's like I'm not getting booked to headline clubs, but I can headline DIY shows
yeah,
all over the country. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's like
yeah, man,
that's kind of our bread and butter. So it's like if
yeah.
we all weren't doing that and we didn't have this kind of network that we have, things
Mhm.
would be so much more
And
difficult.
dude, what's so great too is the vetting system inherent to that network is so strong. Like I can
Yeah.
get a message from you out of nowhere and say, "Hey, have you heard of this person? They're hitting me up for a show," and I can either instantly say, "I've never heard of them,"
Hmm.
which in and of itself might mean something or not,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
or yeah, they're fucking great, or no, they're shithead. Don't work. You know what I mean.
exactly.
And not that that should inform your opinion or your decision at all, but the circle that has grown nationwide, it really helps comedy as a whole. I think bring it up because people talk to
Mhm.
each other. You
Yeah.
know, like when I started, man, that was not a thing. You know, it
No, no,
was
of course not. That's the whole thing in this with all of us being connected, but it's also with social media and everything that's there. It's
mhm,
like right now, if things were back to normal and you did a show and somebody was there that just did something, let's just say they went racist on stage and
yeah,
some crazy Michael Richards shit.
right, yeah,
You will immediately be like, "Da, da, 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 da," yeah, put it on your Facebook page. The next thing you know, 5,000 people know, and they
yeah,
tell 5,000. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like that information gets out like that, where it used to be you had to hear it through a grapevine. Now it all happens so fast.
yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
I should point out though too, I try not to do that. If I see someone, even if they're spouting racist shit, I'll
Yeah,
just be like, "Whoa, good luck
yeah,
with that, pal." And
sure.
I'm not the one to be like, you
But
know what I mean?
well, at the
But
same time, though, if somebody asked you about it, you'd be
oh,
honest.
I would
Of
absolutely.
course, of course.
I would
You
say,
get you get what I'm saying, though. You get
yeah,
what I'm saying.
absolutely.
I'm not exactly the first one to go jump on Facebook too, but it's always good to, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
but the vetting, I like that you brought that up because that's a
yeah,
huge point. It's a huge
yeah.
point.
So
Okay.
I know you asked for one answer, but kind of those three things all
No,
together.
no, that's great. That's perfect. That's what I was looking for. So now, what do you hate? Tear
What I
something
hate,
down. Tear it down.
I'll tear down. Okay, this is also kind of a two-pronged start. Well,
Sure.
the one, it is a pet peeve. This isn't my answer, but if you have 8 minutes and you get on stage and you start saying, "What else did I want to talk about?" and scroll on your phone, I fucking hate you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong to bring a notebook on stage. I still, as someone who's been doing this for 12 years and recording specials, I still use a set list if I feel like it.
Sure.
It'll be taped. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Bands use it.
No, not at all.
I
Yeah.
don't, as long as you're not reading your notes, that's fucked
Hmm.
up. But a bullet point set list, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed how many Netflix motherfuckers do that. You just don't know it. So
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah,
yeah,
man, I've seen
I
it
don't think there's
firsthand.
anything wrong with that. But if you're on your fucking phone doing a 10-minute spot, going, "What else did I want to talk about?"
Hmm.
You're disrespecting the stage. You know,
Yeah.
you should know what you want to talk about, or you should be doing less time.
Hmm.
So that's just and that's for whatever reason, that seems to be a bit of an younger person thing. I don't really see comics over 35 doing that. I'm sure some do, but generally it's just a younger person pet peeve thing.
Yeah.
My main gripe, which I usually bring up, and this is something that Austin is guilty of. This is something that Chicago is guilty of. Certainly LA, but LA is its own beast. Is comedy doing shows, a scene doing shows every night of the week for free,
Mm-hmm.
where and then comics then in turn complaining you can't make any money in comedy.
Yeah.
As someone who lives in Austin, I like doing shows in Austin. I do maybe 3 or 4 a year,
Mm-hmm.
total. I'll do drop-ins and work out stuff,
Yeah.
if I feel like it,
Mm-hmm.
or a show like Punch, at Cap City, which is like the comedy death ray of Austin, or, something that
Yeah.
makes sense to do and have fun. And it's not, but, and one of those is usually a festival gig,
Mm-hmm.
There's a tattoo festival I do now every, January, and called Star Texas Tattoo Festival. And it's just, if you don't give a reason, if you don't make it special, if you don't give people a reason to come see you locally, then they're not gonna. It's like the same, bands do it too. They play too much. You need to let the audience miss you a little bit. And so, and also I understand you're doing a Tuesday show, you can't necessarily charge a cover.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that comedy is given away so freely, it's bad for the show. Because if people are, even if they're paying $3, even if they have to buy a drink, even if it's $5 donation at the door, or whatever, there's some invested psychological exchange when you're saying, all right, I'm paying for something and I'm getting something in return, and you're invested a little bit,
Yeah.
even if it's a little bit.
Yeah.
A free show, any asshole can walk in. They don't even know a show's happening. They're at the bar talking. What?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask for this.
They don't have any skin in the game.
Yeah, the unspoken performer watchy audience member agreement is not there at all. And so free shows, man, I go to some, and some are really good. There's a free show every Wednesday called Buzzkill at the Buzzmill here in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of comics on tour will stop it and do it because it can be, but it's packs out with college kids. But I've never been to that show, and it's a good show. I've never been to that show where I didn't see at least one asshole talking at his table, having a conversation, or disrupting, or somebody with a dog that walks in the middle and it's barking, and so it takes away from the touring comics 10 minutes when I'm trying to watch fucking Rena Calm or Mike Stanley or whoever. So I feel like the enthusiasm for comedy to want to do it so much and get so much stage time. I wish people would pump the brakes and just be like, yes, that might mean less stage time, but in this scenario, it's a better show and people get paid, even if it's a gas money or all those things. So I think that the ever constant waterfall of just free shows in every scene, because it dilutes it to a point where people don't care.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I run a couple of shows that are free for the public, but I've worked it out with the venue where they actually give us a budget so I can pay the comics.
Well, a show like yours, which is super established, and one of my great regrets is I never got to do your proper show. That fucking bums me out.
Well, with that one we do charge. That one we do charge for. I do charge for that one. That one's $8 a ticket. But I run another show called Awesome Comedy Hour that's free.
That must be the one.
But the venue is I always think the relationship with the venue is like very symbiotic. Do you know what I mean? Because we're doing you a favor if we're doing a good job, because we're bringing people to you that are going to buy alcohol. They're going to buy food, and we're making you money. So if you share that money with us and I can pay my comics, I'm going to bring you a better quality product. And then you're going to make money, and people are going to talk about you, and people who wouldn't normally come there are going to start coming here.
Absolutely.
Right? So then that means that they have to help me police the room. So in those venues that I do that with, the bartenders are the one going, shut your fucking mouth, shut your mouth, or you're out of here. I don't have to do it. So it's like the venues, like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not giving you $1, but you can use my stage. They don't care. The comics aren't getting paid. So then their level of care is down. Then Joe, who's the fucking regular who's drank at that bar for 14 years, get up and
Yeah.
call you a cocksucker on stage. And you're like, can we get this guy out of here? And they're like, no, Joe drinks here every night. I'm not kicking out a fucking regular. And you're like, great. Okay.
I had that in my one show in Wyoming. There was this fucking dude at the bar who wouldn't shut up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the bartender from the earlier shift. He works here. We can't tell him." Like, he works here?
Exactly, right? Oh, if you've ever, like that bartender that yelled at you that time, it's like, if you're doing a show and the staff is fucking with you, you're like,
Yes.
what is happening?
Fuck that venue. Oh, but you're absolutely right, because like you take like Star Bar that Rodney Leet runs. I know it's in a weird spot right now as far as what's happening with it. But
Mhm.
that's a free show on a Monday, and that
Yeah.
show, fucking. I went into that the first time I did it. I headlined it, I think, 2 years ago, and I had heard from every comic that I respect, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And but the pessimist to me, I'm like, I'm sure it's good. I didn't think it was not going to be good, but I went in and I was like, "What time to go on?" He's like, "midnight." I'm like, "It starts at 8:30."
Yeah, you're
He's
like, this isn't
like,
gonna
"There's no way this is gonna."
Yeah.
But everyone stayed. It was one of those magical spots, and I was like, everything I've heard is fucking true. This room is magic, and a free show, fucking fire.
Yeah.
And so certain ones like that, notwithstanding, some of them are just, I've heard nothing. I was supposed to do Hot Tub finally in LA when I was out there with Eddie doing some solo shows in February, and they ended up having a last minute double booking thing, blah, blah. So I'm doing it next time. But, certain shows like that, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the bar shows or the coffee house shows or the glorified mics that are just, I don't have a lot of sympathy for comics that, you can never make money in comedy.
Yeah.
You have to work your ass off to do it, but you can make a living in comedy if you don't give it away all the time.
I'm
You have
also
to
a big proponent of quality over quantity.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
in a scene, if you have a bunch of if you have great shows that are great, that's awesome. And you should shepherd those. Do you know what I mean? You should, and there's no reason sometimes it's like, hey, we don't have a show on a Sunday night. Maybe we don't need a show on a Sunday night.
Right.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Maybe we should
Exactly
just
right.
take that fucking day off and come back the next week and just have another great show. So but we're also in this weird thing with comedy that it's so prevalent now that whether we want to be or not, there's gatekeepers everywhere. Do you
Sure.
know what I mean?
Oh,
Whether you
absolutely.
want to be or not. So what young comics will do, they'll go, you know what? It's going to take me 2 to 3 years of hard work to be able to do this premiere show. I'm just going to do my own show.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And
Without
the thing that they don't think about is if they bring a poor quality product to the stage and somebody who doesn't come to comedy normally is there that night, they don't go, that show sucked. They go, comedy sucked.
Absolutely right. That is
And then they don't want to come to your good show because they're like, no, I went to that other fucking shit show. And this is a shit show too. And you're like, no. But people don't understand that one thing is not representative. It's that whole fucking thing, like with any comics. Like if some fucking idiot out there sees a woman who they don't think's funny, they're like, no women are funny. It's like, no, that's fucking stupid. But it's the same thing. They see a bad show, they're like, comedy sucks. It's like, no.
Yeah, but it's the thing that as comics, because we're so close to it too, and we're comedy fans, the general public, comedy is not even as popular as it is right now, it's a fantastic time. And again, this is pre-virus, hopefully post down the road.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic time as far as visibility and people treating comedy as an art form and all those things. And it is still so sub-tiered to the shittiest band that could fill look in terms of general knowledge. Or take somebody like fucking Tom Segura or Chad Daniels or any of these people that are, Joe DeRosa, people that are fucking brilliant and good people and busting their ass in clubs, and they're getting there. They're all doing well. But you grab 10 random motherfuckers now out on the street and say, hey, how many of you know who Chad Daniels is and what he does?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of a microcosm of a microcosm.
Yeah.
So
No,
right, man. So somebody that walks in who's just like, I'll give comedy a try tonight. Not only are they saying, wow, comedy sucks, the odds of getting them back to any show ever again, unless they get free tickets in the mail for the dude from fucking Who's the Boss 2 or whatever TV
Mhm.
fucking thing are very few and far between. You
Yeah,
just lost them forever. And it's
yeah.
that person's fault who started that shitty show and didn't police
I agree. I
it. Yeah.
agree completely. So we got what you love, we got what you hate. We talked about significant shows throughout your career. Right now, real quick, what do you? Anything you want to plug? Where can people find you, and what content can they get from you right now when we're on lockdown? And what can they
Yeah.
look forward to when we're back to normal?
Well, I've had this weird kind of emergence. I was home for a bit in January and started messing around with custom toys, action figures. And so I've started making those under the banner JT Customs, and it's kind of taken off in a weird way. So I've
They're
been doing.
awesome, by the way. I see them all the time. I'm part of the Facebook group. They're fantastic.
Thanks, buddy. So if you go to just JT Custom Toys on Instagram is a good way to do it. And there's a Facebook group as well. I do a couple of those a week. I'm in the middle of Shining Week right now. I'm doing a
Mhm.
Shining figures every day. And so that kind of took on a life of its own, which I did not expect. It was strictly like a let me try this for fun DIY
Sure.
hobby. And it's saving my ass right now because it's my only work, which is weird.
Yeah.
Um, but that aside, I am getting ready to hopefully record the audio book of my last novel, Killing for a Living, for Audible.
Hmm.
Working on that right now and compiling a bunch of extras, which will be chats, behind the scenes chats, and just conversations about writing books and stuff like that with people like Chuck Reagan from Hot Water Music is on it, and Mishka
Hmm.
Shubaly, and Brian Posehn's going to be in there, and
Yeah.
Stanhope, and people like that. Um, and so I'm working on the audiobook now, so hopefully that'll be out soon.
Hmm.
And then aside from that, man, I'm just waiting like everybody else, trying to be safe and smart about when we can do road dates again. I mean,
Yeah.
Pepitone and I have dates on the books for June, but we're both very cautious individuals when it comes to
Yeah.
being smart and believing science and all those things. And so we haven't canceled those dates.
All my dates have canceled till June right now. I
Yeah,
still have my June dates on the books, but
same. Yeah, that's it. It's like, and we have, for stuff like Bird City or
yeah.
Memphis Comedy Festival that we're supposed to headline both of those. We have them. We're giving them options for dates for later in the fall, and hopefully that'll come to fruition. But we have a full schedule, man. But it's also I don't know. Nobody knows, and
I know,
it's
right?
the type of thing. Once it does open, even if it's safe and there's you know science is saying go ahead, does that mean people are going to have money to go to see shows? Are they going to be? I think the enthusiasm is going to be there. I just don't know. Everyone's broke,
Yeah.
myself included. It's a real for comics and bartenders and band people and all the touring folks. It's fucking hard, man. It's
I
like
know,
it's
right?
you
The
gotta
gig
tour
economy is shit.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it's I don't know. But anyway, to answer, not to be a downer,
Yeah.
but
Way to fucking bring it down,
I'm gonna
JT.
bring it down.
Appreciate it.
I'm just making toys and working on this audiobook right now to try and keep myself
Yeah.
afloat and sane. And I'm real eager to get back out and do shows again. But if you go to jtcomedy.com, that has links to all my stuff and
Mhm.
the dates. Eddie and I are touring together for the foreseeable future, so we have stuff booked through 2020 right now, festivals and
Yeah.
shows. And
We'll get you
Altercation
back on the books
Comedy.
to come here, of course.
Yeah, man, I want to remit. We were supposed to do the show with you there right before
Yeah.
Memphis stuff, and we're supposed to do Nashville and
Yep.
uh, get back to Chattanooga and stuff. And so we're really going to try to remake as many of the shows as we can,
Hmm.
schedules permitting. But as anything, the calendar is a bit of our enemy right now, as we all don't
Sure.
know what the fuck you can't plan. But
Well,
Altercation
fingers
Comedy
crossed.
Fest,
Maybe we can see you on the road with Pepitone towards the end of summer, in the fall, winter,
I
hopefully.
hope so, man. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
ballpark. Assuming everything's safe, that would be. We're gonna.
Yes. Yes.
Assuming we get the green light and it's good to go, we're ready to hit it. So it's just trying to be
Awesome.
smart.
All right. So in the meantime, check out jtcomedy.com. Look up JT Custom Toys on Instagram. The guy's got books. He's got albums. He's got action figures. He's got a lot
Yeah.
of shit. Check him
Yeah.
out.
Oh, I should also say standuprecords.com has my whole back catalog. You can find a
Nice.
bunch of records and stuff on there and specials. And my new album is called Swamp Beast. I
I saw
was
the art. It's fantastic.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I was supposed to record that last week in Gainesville, Florida, but now it's pushed off until it's smart and safe to do it and schedule wise. So
Mm.
it'll be coming, and that'll be out on 800 Pound Gorilla Records in association with Warner Music Group. So
Nice.
just
All right.
jtcomedy.com has all the shit.
Yeah. Check out Altercation Records too.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, we have a new album from Heels, who are Josh McClain and my frequent
Brennan.
mate,
Yeah.
and Brennan. Fucking amazing record. New
Oh man,
album.
I love Heels, man. Yeah,
Oh,
Heels is great.
so
That's
good.
they're a comedy heart band. Well, all us comedians love the Heels.
Those dudes are so talented. They have a new video coming out in about a week too. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
check out Heels. Heels.
Yes, sir. Great music. Thank you for joining us, JT. We greatly appreciate it. It was an
Thank you
excellent
so much, buddy.
conversation.
Good to see you.
Yeah, please, guys, stay tuned for more episodes of Who Books That, where we're going to have more fabulous conversations with comedians. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.